Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. Guys, today's theory is going to blow your mind. It explores a path that I think makes a lot of sense based on what has already been shown in the manga, especially considering the recent events involving Luffy, the concept of Nika, and the unexpected connection between Kizaru and the Sun God. Maybe, just maybe, we've already seen some hints scattered throughout past chapters that went unnoticed. And when we connect everything, the idea that Kizaru could become Luffy's right-hand man after Egghead starts to seem much more plausible. So, let's start from the beginning. Because if there's one thing Oda does well, it's leaving clues long before revealing the answers. If we go back to chapters like 1092 and 1093, where Luffy and Kizaru's fight takes place in Egghead, we can notice something interesting about how Kizaru reacts to Gear 5. At first, he seems to follow the same pattern as always. An admiral fulfilling his duty, without showing much emotion, just trying to neutralize Luffy with his light-based attacks. But as the fight progresses, his behavior changes. He starts hesitating. Kizaru doesn't fight with the same ferocity as Kaido or Lucci. He seems to be testing Luffy, almost as if he wants to understand the way he fights. And here's the first important detail. Kizaru, unlike other antagonists Luffy has faced, doesn't show hatred, resentment, or a desire for revenge. Maybe, just maybe, he has already seen something in Luffy that made him reconsider his position. If we look at Luffy's fight against Kaido in chapters like 1044 and 1045, it's very clear that Gear 5 has an effect on the people around it. The laughter, the freedom, the contagious energy of the sun. God Nika seemed to awaken something in those nearby. Even Kaido himself, who until then was an unstoppable force, starts to get into this more playful rhythm of the fight. This raises a possibility. What if Kizaru, upon witnessing Gear 5 in action, is also affected by this influence? Maybe what we saw in Egghead is the first sign that Kizaru could end up switching sides. But why would this make sense within the story? To answer that, we need to understand who Kizaru really is. Since his first appearance back in chapter 506, Kizaru has always been portrayed as someone who follows orders, but without much enthusiasm. He doesn't seem to have a deep desire to hunt pirates like Akainu, nor an inflexible sense of justice like Aokiji. He just does what he's told without questioning too much. But has that always been true? If we look at Vegapunk's flashback in chapters 1066 and 1067, we can see that Kizaru was involved with experiments and technological advancements long before the current events. He has a connection with Dr. Vegapunk, which could mean he understands much more about what's happening behind the scenes than he lets on. And here's where it gets interesting. Vegapunk is now one of Luffy's biggest allies. If Kizaru has any level of respect for Vegapunk and starts to see that Luffy might be the real answer to the world's problems, maybe he will decide to change sides. And if we go even further, there is a very curious parallel between Kizaru and the concept of the sun god Nika itself. If we remember what was said back in chapter 1044, the sun god is the one who brings freedom to people. He is the one who dances, laughs, and makes others laugh. Kizaru, on the other hand, is pure light, absolute speed, someone who has never truly been free within the marine structure. He has always followed orders, always completed missions, but has never chosen his own path. If we connect these ideas, then the possibility of Kizaru becoming a follower of the sun god Nika, and consequently Luffy's right-hand man, starts to make a lot more sense. Now, the question is, how would this happen in practice? I think the answer lies in how Oda builds redemptions within the story. We've seen several characters who started as enemies and later became powerful allies, like Frankie, Robin, and Jinbei. But in Kizaru's case, the change might not have to be so explicit. He doesn't necessarily have to become a pirate, but maybe, just maybe, he starts acting as a free agent. Someone who chooses to follow Luffy not out of obligation, but because he believes it's the right path. And if we think about the mythology behind Nika, there's another name that could be important. Pika. In the real world, Pika can be associated with light, with intense brightness, something that makes perfect sense for Kizaru. If Oda wants to play with words, he might end up linking Kizaru to this concept, making him a kind of Pika to Luffy's Nika, the duo of light and sun, the fast messenger who spreads freedom across the world. If Oda decides to take this route, maybe after Egghead we'll see Kizaru disappearing for a while, only to reappear at a crucial moment, choosing to support Luffy instead of the Marines. This would open up massive room for Akainu's reaction, for the world government to realize that even their own admirals are starting to question the system they serve, and for Luffy to gain an incredibly strong ally without having to convince anyone with words, but simply with his actions and the freedom he represents. Maybe, just maybe, we're witnessing the beginning of something much bigger than just a fight between an admiral and a Yonko. This could be the first sign that the Marines' light is no longer under the control of the world government. It could mean that Kizaru, instead of just being a soldier, decides to become a messenger of freedom. And if that's the case, then the sun god Nika might be about to gain his own shining star to illuminate his path even more. Just imagine, Kizaru's transition from admiral to a potential ally of Luffy wouldn't just be a huge shift for the character, it would also reflect the changes happening within the world of One Piece. This isn't something that would happen overnight. His transformation would need to be subtle and gradual, something that Oda has executed masterfully with other characters throughout the story. It's worth noting that Kizaru has so far been one of the few characters who maintains a critical distance from the events around him. He was never fully immersed in the ideological battles that divide the Marines, like the clash between Akainu and Aokiji, or even Sengoku and Garp's obsession with justice. Instead, Kizaru has always seemed more focused on carrying out his tasks without deeply engaging in the philosophical issues that drive the world government. This detachment, while it may seem like a weakness in terms of loyalty, can also be interpreted as a sign that Kizaru has yet to find a true purpose, something that makes him truly identify with the cause he serves. On the other hand, the introduction of Nika and Luffy's awakening to this new identity might be the key for Kizaru to finally understand what true freedom is and what it means to fight for something beyond a mere mission. After all, Luffy has always been a symbol of that freedom, someone who never allowed himself to be imprisoned by the systems and rules imposed by others. The fact that Kizaru is witnessing this power awakening in Luffy up close might be exactly what he needs to finally question his role within the Marines. And it's not like he's out of options. The turning point could very well happen after the events of Egghead, where Kizaru has time to reflect and step away from the institutional pressure of the world government. The fact that he already has connections with Vegapunk and now with Luffy only strengthens this idea. Deep down, Kizaru might be the kind of character who, upon realizing that the real battle is no longer between pirates and Marines, but against a corrupt system that enslaves and manipulates, chooses to follow his own path alongside those who seek to change the world for the better. And if this happens, it won't be a cliche turn of villain becoming a hero or anything like that. Kizaru's change wouldn't be that simple. He wouldn't become a pirate in the traditional sense, but rather a free agent, perhaps even more dangerous than if he had remained a Marine admiral. What Kizaru would bring to the table is the experience, speed, and agility of one of the most powerful admirals, combined with a new vision of what it truly means to be free. However, while he distances himself from the world government, new challenges would also arise. Akainu himself, the embodiment of absolute justice, wouldn't let this go unnoticed. And we can imagine that at some point he would directly confront Kizaru, perhaps even being forced to face the truth that the Marines, as they exist today, are doomed to fail. The world government could start to fragment, with figures like Kizaru becoming disillusioned with the established order and seeking a new path. In the end, Kizaru's change would be yet another reflection of One Piece's grand theme, the pursuit of freedom and truth, even if it means questioning everything you once believed to be right. Luffy, as the sun god Nika, could be the catalyst for Kizaru to finally open his eyes to what he truly represents in a world that is on the brink of complete transformation. And this transformation of Kizaru breaking away from the Marines and aligning himself with Luffy could set off a chain of events that would shake the foundations of the world government. If Kizaru, with all his experience and power, began to support Luffy's cause, it wouldn't just mean an extremely powerful ally for the Straw Hat Pirates, but also a psychological and strategic blow to the Marines. After all, he's not just any admiral, he's one of the most respected, with a reputation built over years. Akainu and the world government's immediate reaction would be pure outrage and desperation. Kizaru, one of the pillars of the Marines, abandoning the established order would be like a crack forming in the institution's foundation. Not to mention the psychological impact on other Marines and even other admirals, who might start questioning their own loyalties and the truth of their beliefs. In a world as unpredictable as One Piece, where characters constantly switch sides and challenge norms, Kizaru could be the first of many to start seeing the Marines and the world government in a different light. What's most interesting is that this change wouldn't necessarily be forced. Kizaru wouldn't need a grand speech from Luffy or a dramatic moment to be convinced that the Marines are corrupt. On the contrary, he could undergo an internal evolution based on his own observations, experiences, and the people he has met along the way. Kizaru is someone who already has a pragmatic view of the world. He's not someone who blindly follows ideologies. If the world government is on the wrong side, he might come to the conclusion that fighting alongside Luffy, who represents a freer and more just future, is the only sensible option. But what do you think about this? That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.